Now, the first thing to determine is how long Luce was in the Boiling Isles before returning at the end of Season 2. Now, many thought that Reality Check Camp was a summer camp, so that's about 3 months, plus the month between Season 2 Episode 11 and the Season 2 finale when the Day of Unity occurs, which all takes place after camp ends. And at first glance, that seems to be the case, given we see the calendar in Luce's house in the human realm at the end of Season 2 Episode 15, and it says it's August, so Luce and her friends arrive on Earth in September. At least at first glance. But this is actually wrong, as various things from the show contradict this. That calendar was lying. Now first, just on a personal note, I think it's kind of absurd that the Hextide Squad would have spent over a year in the human realm, since, remember, Willow has that scrapbook which includes photos of the gang having fun during the summer in the human realm, and then they return to the Boiling Isles in Season 3 Episode 1 during Halloween. So if the calendar we see in Season 2 Episode 15 is to be believed, then regardless of whether they return in September or even very early October, if you really want to stretch it, then that would still mean a year in the human realm. And I just can't believe they took over a year to return to the Boiling Isles. I know they had less incentive to return than Anne and the Planters over in Amphibia, because unlike King Andrias, the Collector wasn't planning to invade the human realm, and while the Collector was dangerous because of his powers, he was still just a kid who wasn't actively trying to hurt the Boiling Isles, unlike Andrias, who was conquering Amphibia and stripping it of its resources to fuel his robot army. So the Hextide Squad has less reason to hurry back, unlike Anne and the Planters. But even with less incentive, they still would get back before an entire year passes. Now for my actual case, there's plenty of evidence in the show itself that proves it wasn't August in Season 2 Episode 15, and that Reality Check Camp also wasn't a summer camp. First, we know Reality Check Camp didn't happen during the summer, because in Season 3 Episode 1, we see Luce's video diaries mentioning how she just got her report card, and because of how bad it was, she wants to try and do good on her book report, or we saw her do in the very first episode. So school is still in session for a while longer, given Luce just got a report card, but school is still going on, meaning it was a report card for one semester, and now the next semester is starting. And her first assignment is a book report. And Luce is going to be sent into the camp immediately after the book report fiasco, so school is still in session while V is there and Luce is in the Boiling Isles. So I guess the camp counts as school credit too. Also, the camp wasn't 3 months like we thought, but maybe 2 to 2.5 months. Why is that, you may ask? Well, in Season 1, Episode 18, Belos mentioned how it's been a little over a month since Lilith promised to bring Eda to him, and Lilith made that promise presumably back in Episode 5 of Season 1. So between Episode 5 and the Season 1 finale, a little over a month has passed, probably a month and a half. Now, factoring in some extra time for the events of the first 4 episodes of both Season 1 and Season 2, then by the time of Season 2 Episode 4, when the camp has ended and V is back with Camilla, it's probably been anywhere between 2 months to 2.5 months. And then again, we factor in some extra time for the events of the next 6 episodes of Season 2 before we reach Episode 11, where Belos says the Day of Unity is only a month away. And we can safely assume the events of the first 2 seasons happen over the course of 3.5 to 4 months. So now we must determine when Luce leaves for the Boiling Isles. At least one semester of school has ended, and the next one had begun around the time she left. That helps narrow it down. But the timeline of Amphibia can help us narrow it down even more, if not get almost the exact time. Now, Luce comes from the same Earth as Anne and the others. That is 100% confirmed. And because of that, and the fact that no one believes Jacob's conspiracy theories about witches, must mean the events of Amphibia are still going on by the time Luce first arrives in the Boiling Isles. Since if the events of Amphibia had already occurred before the start of the Owl House, then more people would be quick to believe Jacob and not ridicule him because of King Andrias and the Corps' invasion of Earth, becoming public knowledge. Sure, some would not believe the invasion happened because of Mr. X trying to cover it up, but there would still be believers, because there is no way Mr. X could have covered it up completely, given how much evidence there was. Thousands of witnesses, many of them probably recording the events on their phones, as well as news channels broadcasting and covering the invasion. So many would still believe it happened, which it did, and thus people would actually believe Jacob when he talks about witches and demons, because after the robot frog invasion, it sounds very believable. Thus, by the time Luce first makes it to the Boiling Isles, the story of Amphibia is still happening, and the timeline for that show is mostly documented. The Calamity Trio are sent to Amphibia while school is still in session. Anne and the Planters arrive on Earth at the end of Season 2, 5 months later, Christmas happens in Season 3, Episode 9, and then the following episode, which most likely takes place after New Year's, so it's sometime in January, and then Anne's parents mention they had a few weeks to train and prepare for King Andrews's invasion when it happens at the end of the series. So the invasion most likely happened anywhere between mid-February to early March, depending on how early in January Anne and the Planters return to Amphibia in Season 3. Now we must determine when Luce left for the Boiling Isles. I'd say the most likely time is, ironically, sometime in January, probably around the same time Anne and the Planners returned to Amphibia in Season 3 of their show, since again, Luce gets a report card before her book report, meaning we're past the beginning of the school year. So most likely Christmas break has come and gone, and we're in the second semester of school, so sometime in January. And again, it's before the invasion in Amphibia. So then 3.5 to 4 months pass before Luce and the others arrive on Earth at the end of Season 2. So they probably arrive anywhere between late March to mid-April, depending on how early in January when Luce left. But regardless, it's long enough past the invasion over in Amphibia, which at the latest happened in early March, meaning by the time Luce and the rest of the Hexside squad arrive on Earth, enough time has passed since the invasion that news of it would reach Connecticut, and Camilla could be reading an article about Anne, like she was in the Season 2 finale, asking if what happened was just a hoax or not. And from there, we know the rest of the story. The Hexside squad spends about 7 months in the human realm, returns to the Boiling Isles on Halloween night at the end of Season 3, Episode 1, and then the last 2 episodes before the time skip happens takes place over the course of 2 days, as the sun rises in the Boiling Isles during Episode 2, and then the final fight with Velos in the next episode takes place at night. So November 2nd is when the adventure of the Owl House ends, meaning it starts sometime in January and ends at the very start of November. So the events of the Owl House happen over the course of about 10 months. But that's just my thoughts on it. What do you all think?